Hello everyone, I'm Jennifer Lokash from Memorial University's Department of English. Welcome to Sparkles 2022, an imprint, we might say, of the Sparks Literary Festival. It has been hard times for organizers of live events like Sparks. We have been thwarted in our efforts to put on a full festival multiple times in these past 2 years. But we have been quietly fanning the festival embers, and this year my colleagues have planned a series of explosive events in flexible formats that continue the project of celebrating the amazing variety of genres, styles, and subjects created by writers in our very midst, crackling with talent and inspiration. Like other Memorial University events that celebrate the rich and sometimes wild literary landscapes of this province, such as our own Visiting Writers series, our Writer in Residence program, and the Office of Alumni Engagement's book club, winningly called Coastlines, to name a few, Sparks has been sharing great writing with appreciative audiences since my colleague Mary Dalton conceived of the festival a remarkable 12 years ago. We are acutely conscious that the beautiful lands on which Memorial's campus are situated and which so vividly take shape in the foregrounds and backgrounds of the work showcased through Sparks are in the traditional territories of diverse Indigenous groups. We acknowledge with respect the histories and cultures of the Beothuk, Mi'kmaq, Innu, and Inuit of this province. We fully commit through Sparks and our other departmental endeavors to honoring these histories and cultures through the crucial work of sharing and promoting many more Indigenous and racialized voices in the years to come. So, what are these sparkles that we are sending up into the universe? Over the next few months, we will be hosting a panel event on genre fiction, an event called 7-Minute Stories, and a spring or summer poetry slam, hopefully in Bannerman Park. We will promote each of these events through our departmental social media and on our Sparks website, so look out for more information soon. For the opening event in the series, we have partnered with Rogers TV, thank you Rogers, to bring you First Pages, readings and interviews with 4 Memorial alumni who will share with us some of their new and exciting work. I will take this opportunity to thank all of the magnificent writers, outstanding interviewers, and brilliant event hosts who will be involved in the Sparkles series. Your generosity and immense creativity is what keep us going. And last but not least, many thanks to you, our faithful Sparks audience, and to readers and lovers of words everywhere.
Hi everybody, my name is Lisa Moore and I am a professor of creative writing in the English department at Memorial University and a writer of novels and short stories and operas, recently one opera. And I'm here with Sparks Festival and I'm here with Megan Gail Coles, who I'm thrilled to be here with. She is, I'm going to introduce her. Megan is a graduate of Memorial University of Newfoundland and Labrador and the National Theatre School of Canada and the University of British Columbia, and she is the co-founder and artistic director of Poverty Cove Theatre Company, for whom she has written many award-winning plays, and I've seen some of them and they're amazing. Her debut short story collection, Eating Habits of the Chronically Lonesome, won the BMO Winterset Award and the Margaret and John Savage First Book Award, and she earned the Writers' Trust of Canada 5x5 prize, and her debut novel, Small Game Hunting at the local Coward's Gun Club, was a finalist for the Scotiabank Giller Prize and a contender for CBC Canada Reads, and recently won the BMO Winterset Award, and that's like a slew of prizes. She's originally from Savage Cove on the Great Northern Peninsula of the island of Newfoundland, Ook da Hamgok. And Megan currently lives in St. John's, where she is the executive director of Riddle Fence Publishing, and she's doing a PhD at Concordia University. Her debut poetry collection, Satched, which I'm thinking she's going to read for a few poems for us here today, was published by House of Anansi this past fall. Megan is one of the most powerful literary voices working in Canada today. And I've heard countless readers from across the country talk about how deeply absorbed they were by Megan's debut novel and how they read it straight through and just didn't sleep. And you know, it's emotionally raw, and it's beautifully crafted and utterly consuming. And I've had those same conversations with people in the lobbies of theaters about your plays. So I'm thrilled to be here, and I'm thrilled to talk with you about literature and to hear your poems.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You are the writer in residence at Memorial right now, and I'm just wondering what you've done with your time so far and what you're planning to do, and also what teaching means to you.
So while I'm the writer in residence at Memorial, I am giving a series of fiction workshops that take 16 selected participants through the writing process from conception to presentation. And so each workshop is structured so that they would be able to ideally replicate this process for themselves later when they don't have me to supervise them or guide them along. And so we have crafting prose, editing prose, publishing prose, and presenting prose. And each one focuses on an aspect of the writing craft that might not necessarily be spoken to like specifically. And so right now, the next one we're about to have, we've got a great group. They're really enthusiastic and dedicated, so I'm really excited about the work that they're creating. Our next one is going to be on how to approach publishers, whether that be a literary journal or a press, to engage themselves in the professional side of like getting their work out to market. And these things, the reason I structured it this way is because when I was a young person at Memorial, I really had no notion of how to go about accessing these resources. I didn't have this knowledge. Like, it is a language that you learn to speak, and I, coming from a working class background where I had no professional artists in my family, I had to learn that language the hard way. And so part of this is hopefully going to assist people who may not have anyone within their circle of connections, their network, help them then be able to approach the business side of writing in a way that doesn't make it so excruciating. I mean, it was quite a hard undertaking for me. Like, I found it very alienating, and I don't want other people to lose so much time and energy having to do the hard work that I've already done and a lot of writers have done coming up through the ranks. I'm sure you have had similar experiences as well.
Yes, I mean, I think it's very important to try and connect Newfoundland and Labrador writers to publishers if at all possible. I remember when one of my books was being published on the mainland for the first time, one of the editors said, "Can you tell me some famous author that you know that you could ask for a blurb?" And I said, I don't know any famous authors. And that person said, "Oh, come on, everybody knows somebody." And I said, "No, actually no." But you know, things have changed, and it's important for people to understand those kinds of things.
But it can be so intimidating, just like from the respect of like getting a blurb. Like, there's such a huge part of the marketing around your work now. And the way that social media has changed, presentation is such a huge part of our work. Like, I don't think that's going away. I think the presenting side of being a prose writer is now, because of our geographical isolation here on the island of Newfoundland, we're going to have to be able to be engaging and animated in these other on these other platforms and these other realms. And so part of it is trying to, because I went to theater school and I have this classical theater training, trying to help them read their work better, trying to help them kind of not necessarily rehearse it, because there has to be some aspect of liveliness to it, because it's like a performance that's happening live. But I want them to present their work to the best of their ability, so that they don't lose readers accidentally by not being able to be comfortable in that kind of setting.
And engage an audience.
Engaging, yes. I mean, how many times have you been to a reading or seen a reading on the internet where unfortunately the person was so intimidated by what they were doing that you couldn't even actually like hear the work at all, or they read too long, or they read something that wasn't the correct passage for the environment that they were reading in, or unfortunately it was really boring. Like, there's ways to like navigate and negotiate this so that they are, you know, putting their best foot forward, so to speak.
Right. Megan, just to switch gears a little bit, I want to talk about your work. And I mentioned in the introduction just all of the different genres that you work in, and I'm curious about what drives you to take on a different form. This is a book of poetry, and is there something about the subject matter that calls for a different form, or are you excited by the form and you go and then subject matter follows? How does that work?
So I think of what I do as like very fundamentally as a storytelling. Like, I feel like I'm a storyteller, and the medium comes after the subject. And so the form is dictated by what kind of story I want to tell and who I'm telling it to, or who I intend to speak to. And so I know that there's a school of thought that I would advise writers to disregard their audience. I don't belong to that particular school of thought. Like, I'm very cognizant of the audience and what their comfort level might be, and what their capacity to take in like certain triggering kind of narratives may be maxed out at. And so all of these things are part of the process that I go through when I'm determining what form I'm going to write in. And so with regards to writing a play is something that takes place inside the confines of a physical space, which is one of the most magical parts of theater, right? Like, a group of people that don't know each other agree to go inside of this box and see something together. It is really, there's nothing like it. And when it's done well, it is a kind of a transformative experience that I can't think, like maybe a concert, or some people have those experiences in church. Like, this is what that collective catharsis feels like. But you have to be mindful of the fact that some people may not feel comfortable like having those thoughts and feelings inside of the black box, where they are kind of surrounded by other individuals. And so in cases like that, maybe a prose format would be more accurate if it's going to be something that could potentially do harm. For example, there are some scenes inside of small game hunting that I would never put on stage, because how can you prepare anybody for what is about to happen, right? So I'm thinking about the emotional, the emotional health and the emotional wellness of the people that are going to engage with my work, because I respect them and I want them to be well. Like, I don't want to do anything that like makes their life worse. And so there's that as a part of the process, but there's also like acknowledging time and commitment and the ability to like really like dedicate yourself to something. And so occasionally a poem is the right container, because not everyone has the attention span or the availability of their bandwidth to commit to 425 pages of dense literary prose, right? And so I'm trying to speak to the reader, I'm trying to speak to my community members in every single way I can think of, in order to try to I suppose, move the conversation even a little bit forward. And if there are other ways of doing it, I'll probably try those too. Like if I can't get them in the literary format, I will move outside of the literary format. Like it's about forming that connection and what is the best vehicle for forming the connection.
That's a great answer. That's a really great answer. These poems and your other work is full of dialect, Newfoundland dialect, and I want you to tell me just specifically what kind of dialect it is, because I think there are over 400 very identifiable and specific dialects all over at least the island of Newfoundland, and also the vernacular, a particular vocabulary. And what are you doing with that? Why are you writing in dialect sometimes and using that vocabulary, and how does that speak?
Well, I'm from the northernmost part of the Northern Peninsula, and so the dialect that I'm most comfortable writing in is specific to the Straits area, and that would be the Strait of Belle Isle. So I come from the part of the Northern Peninsula that is the closest land point to the continent of North America. It's where they claim to be digging a tunnel, but there's just a hole there now currently. We played in it. It was kind of fun occasionally. And it's also a bit dangerous, come to think of it. But anyway, and so the linguistic heritage of that region of the province is obviously English and French, with a lot of Scots and Irish. And my family's heritage is Mi'kmaq, and so there would have been that traditional language. And Inuit is also very commonly, Inuktitut is spoken in parts of that region of Newfoundland and Labrador. And so these are all of the linguistic heritages that have kind of come together to form our particular dialect, which is, I didn't realize until I moved to St. John's to pursue my undergrad degree. It's very unique because we have words that are not Anglophone or Francophone words. They're like a hybrid of all of these linguistic influences that come together. And so we also, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending upon how you think about it, we're one of the windiest parts of the province. And so there's a level of like urgency in the delivery that is impacted by the climate. And this is a real thing. Like
No, I know.
You try to communicate something to your mother when you're out at the coastline and gale force winds, and there's like an economy of time and space that makes you really like aware of these other exterior factors to speech, right? And there are numerous, I think, socioeconomic factors that have like really played a role in how we talk and how we communicate. Like we have a strong oral storytelling tradition, which is kind of related to not having like a lot of literacy or resources for literacy throughout the years, which is potentially like sometimes you could see that as a negative, but I like to also see it as a positive, as a strength, because that has crafted like this level of cleverness. Like we may not have had an extensive vocabulary, but we were still intelligent and creative in how we use this limited vocabulary. So all of that is kind of living inside of the dialogue, inside of the dialect, because there's a lot of playfulness with the words. Like I do a lot of wordplay.
Yes. And maybe this is a good time for you to read a poem for us, because I like what you're saying, well, all of that, but also about the wind, because I think the landscape and the land, the actual land under your feet, plays a major role in all of your work as well.
Yes.
And the weather, yeah. So let's have a poem, please.
So the first poem I'm going to read is called Roadside Gardens. Drainage ditches shelter our riddle fences, squatting in peat bog rejected by the crown. Abandoned scarecrows, now just scraps of worn cloth, wave their last threads of bright color, a contrast aside every knobby green spruce, marking it once our necessary place of living. You can only just make out what remains of Pop's old button-up salvaged from the rag bag to worn-off moose and caribou, or some colony of rabbits starved for cabbage heads and carrot tops, the reddish shirt sleeves still discernible enough to cause alarm. This backdrop of shared childhood memory steadies us as we wind our way toward dear kinfolk aging in their place, holding ours together, hands right full of the arthritis froze through and throbbing, after all along hauling tight the strings upon a burlap sack where inside there waits everything. Each passing inspires a new retelling of how it stood upright beforehand, as you are forever searching out words to appease yourself, knowing that when Nan needed help in the garden, you were too busy doing nothing and watching nonsense, imagining the attention of boys who later grew into men you didn't like or hate, going to the garden being some punishment of heritage, labor despised in adolescence, grieves those finally grown up. Nan and Pop, having aged, no longer able-bodied enough to dig up your favorite little taties fresh from the autumn dirt, brought to eye level by those hands in garden gloves, the yellow trim along the wrist beaming. This is a good one, look here. How many is that now, Steve? Then into the beef bucket, pail or bag, into the truck pan, back to the house to rinse under the warm tap. Go on, a bit of dirt won't kill you. Sure, that's good for the immune system. Skin so fine you don't even want to peel them. All they need, see, is a little salt and a small sliver of butter, or you'll spoil the taste. There's some good on their own, or even with a few vegetables in the pot, throw a bottle of meat in with them and you got a stew easy enough. I likes a spoonful of black currant jam on a slice of bread. I takes it into your pot while he watches the hockey. Got the TV up on blasty heaven there. Deaf now is, see, Maggie? And on and on and on. The sounds of being handed to yet held away from what made you. We stopped practicing our culture by accident.
That's beautiful.
Thanks.
I mean, one of the things I love about it is that there's a trajectory of childhood to perhaps adulthood, and the feeling of nostalgia and for what's lost or what's being lost. Both your grandparents, whom it's clear in this poem you deeply love, and the culture, and we hear that culture when your grandmother speaks in that poem, and the speaking is in italics, I think, and I think that italics it gives the poem a ghostly feeling, because we not only do the words express that loss, but the font does as well. We're beginning to wonder, how much longer will this go on? This beautiful life that you describe. It's a beautiful poem.
Thanks. I mean, I was one of the generation that had a great shift in our culture in that we had cable television. Like, I didn't have it in my early childhood, but like somewhere around the age of 10 or 11, we got our 13 channels. And those influences, those cultural influences from the dominant American culture changed like our preoccupations. And so I really do feel a great deal of regret over not going to the garden with Nanny when Nanny asked me to. So I could watch reruns of like that Gilligan's Island or something. It was really not pertinent to my life now, and it's the great tragedy of living is that the hindsight is in hindsight, and you can never know as a child that the valuable experience is the one that you sometimes value the least. Like, if I would give anything to go back and go into the garden with Nan now, at that time when we go berry picking and she shoved my berries down in the tub, I thought it was actual torture. Like, I thought Nanny was but she was just trying to teach me grit and determination and value and all kinds of other things.
Can we have another poem?
Yeah, sure. I actually chose another like plant-related poem,
Okay.
which was intentional
Hungry,
and not
are ya?
intentional. Well, I quite like this one as well, and they're different and they speak to similar subjects. So, house plants and house cats. Clip a piece of yourself off like a house plant the cat gnawed on all winter. You too can be reborn in water. A glass on the windowsill can do a lot of growing. It's like this. A few short days ago, this new plant was nothing worse, a worn, half-eaten wreck gnawed to bring bile up on the carpet. But you never mind, that was before now. The past is teaching you adaptation. All things lying suffering from envy and greedy esteem can be revived. Fresh air, sunshine, concern. Turn yourself skyward. The act of arching up alone demonstrates commitment to change. You know yourself now how a fine day on clothes feels like balm upon a sore face pockmarked from interference. Stop picking at yourself like that. You'll scar. Take every inch of the good you got left. Trim your stocks back to what is decent. The whole parts, the before you got cut up in tattered parts. Sever them parts and be fresh. Hole up from sick-feeling felines hoping to ease their own sour insides by tearing some off you. Sure, girl, listen here. Kittens don't know any better than that. Kindles are born destructive. How long have you been sitting there now with that cat upon your lap, afraid to move? Stand up for yourself. Slip yourself clear of cat traps, room full of brown tips, dry rot holding perishing colors. Fill every room, all available space with bloom, new greens. If you keep at it, hang in there. This is long game stuff now. We're talking about preening and plucking free the wilting bits, pinching dead heads between your nails, turning towards sunbeams for balance, pressing fingers into the topsoil. Your cousin hates the word moist. So you said it gratuitously when she annoyed you. This is in the new plant too, this and all the plants that died during that time. Words can't even keep a plant alive. Your old condemnation changes. There will be flowers.
Oh, beautiful.
Thanks.
That feels like it's about more than plants and cats.
Yeah.
Maybe we could talk about decolonization just a little bit.
Well, I think
Because to me it feels like this poem is about regeneration.
yes.
And yeah, so just to tell me about.
I mean, I think there have been like a lot of negative things in our shared history, and that no one can argue with that. Like you could even suggest we are still moving through a lot of negative things in our shared history that unfortunately are replicating like patterns of damage, and perhaps we've not learned much from our lessons learned the hard way, in fact. But I still want people to feel like empowered, that I want people to feel like, I want my readers to feel like the possibility for doing better, for preserving something or starting a new path is always available to them. So when we talk about decolonization, just because we've unfortunately not really like initiated this process to a degree that is showing dividends yet, doesn't mean that tomorrow we can't. Like you can always decide to change regardless of what has come before you. We often, unfortunately, I think in Newfoundland, I can't speak for Labrador, but this is likely a universal kind of experience. We get caught up in the things that we feel most guilty and most shamed about, most shameful of, and that guilt and that shame kind of traps us. It is like, it is a kind of a suffering because you're unable to then approach something in a way to reconcile or recover or almost create anything new out of it because you're too overwhelmed by the things that are weighing you down. And that's really what the poetry collection is about, and even what the title is in reference to, right?
And perhaps all of your work.
Yes, I do definitely circle some themes.
Megan, it's been a total thrill, and I do really love your work, and it inspires me, and I know it inspires tons of other people because they tell me.
Oh.
You're a powerhouse, and I'm so grateful to have had this opportunity to speak with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm glad. It was lots of fun.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks.